our ballots, what we want to do, and we sat down, and one of the first things I remember Adam saying is, I don't care what we vote on, I'm doing Super Sidekick. And we went around that table, and every single person, it was the only show that showed up on everybody's ballot in the first house when we went around. But as well as you show is, I really want to point out the work that Bethany and Sarah and Kate did to really make that show, like, it feels like it just came alive on that. I really want to applaud their work, and that set you should box up and put it in your car and take it with you wherever you go. But I'm going to turn it right back over to you and tell us a little bit about the show and how you wrote it.
Oh, wow. Wow. So this is a small reception. No. Well, hi. My name is Gregory Crafts, and I'm the writer of the book for Super Sidekick The Musical. And first off, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the wonderful hospitality and the generosity and the warmth of your greeting. Both you get from the theater here. I'm touched, and it's amazing, and I couldn't be happier. It's all kind of overwhelming for me right now. So so I guess I'm here to kind of tell the story of how the show came about. Well, let me give you a funny little anecdote to start off with. Super Sidekick was actually the first thing I'd ever really written. I played with ancient poetry and stuff when I was growing up in high school. All the life is so dark and unfortunate. all that. I had written like little things here and there, but nothing that anybody had ever seen. And I was in college at Emerson College in Boston in the summer of 2001, and my theater history professor was also the playwriting professor. And I remember walking up to him after class one day going like, I think I want to take your playwriting class in the fall. And he looked me square in the eye and laughed in my face. And I was like, okay. Being the more confident guy that I am now, I would have been like, whatever, and brushed it off. But I remember walking out of there with my tail between my legs and feeling really downtrodden over the whole incident. I mean, I wasn't the greatest student when I was in school. I was much more interested in exploring student bodies than actually studying my books. But I remember that. And it was 5 years later when I moved to Los Angeles, and I joined a theater company called Bright Eye Repertory, where the artistic director there said, hey, we're starting a directing lab and a writing lab. I was like, what the heck, I'm gonna jump in. And I remember I was actually in kind of an unhappy place in my life at the time. I was in a really, really bad relationship that was going nowhere fast, and there was a lot of stress and pressure of trying to do the Hollywood thing while working nights, while desperately trying to claw something out for myself. And I remember thinking that I wanted to focus on doing something that would make me happy. And then I found out that my sister-in-law, Lindsay, was pregnant with their first, Brody. And I remember being, oh my God, I'm a broke actor with nothing to my name. I want to do something. So I said, you know what, I'm going to write something for my nephew. So I kind of wanted to write something, and I was like, what am I going to write about? And I decided I had to write something that can indoctrinate my nephew in geek culture right when he's young. So I started writing about comic book superheroes with a dash of steampunk, with a dash of with a dash of wizards and everything else, and princesses, and I like to think of myself as a modern feminist, so I was like, strong female characters and feminists and right. So I started developing the play in this writer's lab, and it culminated in a reading, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing I've ever done, it's a reading of my play. And the reading went off. I remember a couple of weeks before, we put out sign-ups to our theater company to go, hey, who wants to be in the reading? And this cute girl who with really curly hair signed up to be in it. And I was like, oh, that's exciting. So I remember we did the introductions and everything. I got to introduce the cast, and suddenly it was so-and-so playing Inky and so-and-so playing Blackjack, and the lovely Jenn doing the narration. I was like, lovely, where the heck did that come from? Just kind of slipped right out. All right, we're going. And afterwards, the reading was very successful, and everybody really enjoyed it. But even then, I kind of felt like I was like, this needs something. And that cute girl emailed me a couple of days later later was like, hey, thank you so much for having me at the reading. I thought it was fantastic. I've done a lot of children's theater, and I think it'd be great as a musical. And I was like, fantastic. So we started dating. About a year later, we were, almost engaged. We moved into a house with 5 other artists because we were all broke and it was the only way we could afford to live out there. And she saw me putting an ad on Craigslist one night, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm looking for a composer for Super Sidekick." And she's like, "I was joking." She's like, I just needed an excuse to email the cute boy. So I was like, well, it was a great idea, so here we go. And the other thing that motivated it, honestly, was I sent it out to a couple of publishers and to a couple of theater companies, and everybody had kind of rejected the place out of me, and I was like, it still needs more. So when I remember Jenn saying, make it a musical, and I went, yes. So I took a whole bunch of emails from people and set a whole bunch of coffee dates at the Denny's right across the street from where I live. And the first time I sat down and watched this old guy, about 10 years older than me, he's very, very quiet, very withdrawn, and he sits down and starts talking to me about this musical that he wrote called The Alleged Adventures of Blenderman, about a superhero called Blenderman who was locked in an insane asylum for trying to preach a good, healthy diet, the virtues of eating correctly. And I was like, you, sir, I like the cut of your jib, sir. So he had called the rest of the appointments, and I gave Mike the script, and back and forth, he wrote all the songs, and he wrote all the lyrics, and some of the things he writes are utterly brilliant, like slurred soliloquy that it's hard to be able still cracks me up every time I hear it. And it's such an incredibly difficult song, but just, it's so good. And we worked it for over a year. And during that time, Jenn and I got married. And I was on my honeymoon, and she was yelling at me for checking my email because I was getting new song edits as we were going. And I was like, I don't care if we're Belize. I'm listening. It's hard to be. I'm listening to because I want to be hero too right now. Go away from it, And we at that point we all left Right Act Preparatory, and Jenn and I and 7 other friends had actually gone off and started our own company called Theater Unleashed, and the company was going into its second season. Second season.
Yep.
And we wanted to do a kid show, and that was code for we're doing Super Sidekick at one point this season. And we put it on the season, and Jenn directed the premiere, and it opened on our first wedding anniversary.
Unplanned. It just happened to open that
day. But the funny thing was, you think that's where the work stopped. Having never written, I had written one other show that's definitely not appropriate for family audiences, unless it's like, you're older. But I can touch on that in a little bit. But I remember, I remember, just thinking how wonderful it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so good that the show is done now. And then it opened, and I saw what the actors were doing with it, and all the little changes in the ad-libs and how they made the characters their own. And I was like, oh, that's funny, I'm going to keep that. Oh, I like that, I'm going to keep that. Oh, I got to change that line because that's perfect, And I went and did a whole bunch of rewrites, and I was like, this is great, this is it, this is the final version. Not anymore, because the next time it went up, even more rewrites. 4 separate productions went up, where I went and took notes and actually did a whole bunch of revamps. We took it to the Hollywood Fringe in 2011, which is a theater festival, which is basically all stripped down. You've got 15 minutes to load in, 15 minutes to load out. Your shows run an average of an hour. The quality varies widely. And I was proud to say that I thought we brought a pretty solid production that year. But every time somebody's put on the super suit, they bring something new and different to the role, and it kept refining and refining and refining. And finally, after 4 productions, we were like, okay, now it's ready to go to the publishers. And there was a local group that wanted there was a local independent label that wanted it, and they were kind of going round and round with me. And then Samuel French came out of nowhere when they heard that so-and-so had put an offer on the table. And I remember sitting, I was having coffee with an uncle of mine who had just flown in for the day. He was down in town on business, and we were getting lunch. And an email pops up on my phone that's like, Samuel French contract offer, and I was like, I'm trying to have a coffee conversation with Mark. It's like, oh, I'm gonna freak out about that in a minute, you know, and then suddenly Mike starts calling me. Like as I'm trying to have this night, and my uncle's finally like, what's going on? And I'm like, I think my life just changed. Hold on a second. And he's like, no, take all the time you need, you know. And yeah, we signed the contract that week, and then a couple of months later we saw it in New York. And it's the second show that we'd ever brought to the New York International Fringe Festival, and it was an incredibly successful co-production that we did with a group in New York. I just kind of signed the checks and we showed up to see it. And I have this tradition now where every time I have a show closed in New York, I get a tattoo based on the show. And that was the second one. I have Inky symbol right here on my shoulder now because I always want that to be a part of this. So,
which I designed.
And which my lovely wife designed. So,
it's not quite at the door.
He can never get rid of me now.
That was the last time we'd seen the show. And since then, there have been productions in Ohio, and there have been productions in Canada. Actually, there was a production of it going up today at a festival in Canada. So this is the second time that the show has gone up in 2 different cities at the same time, which I thought was really wonderful. Yeah, I'm kind of stunned coming in here because I haven't seen it in so long, and this is the first time my nephews and my niece have ever gotten to see it. It's just such a wonderful experience here. I can't thank you guys enough for putting it up, and you did such a wonderful job with it, and I couldn't be prouder, and I couldn't be more excited, and wow, thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I do have a question for him though.
Okay, good.
Did you model Inky off of a specific person that you knew already, or is it just a made-up character?
Well, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. We had this tradition where my friends would come over for New Year's Eve, and they'd spend the night. And we would play Dungeons and Dragons down in the basement on New Year's Eve. And we would always start this big adventure module. It was like 30 pages. It normally takes like 30 hours, 40 hours to get through, to play it all the way through. We'd get through like the first couple of encounters, and the heroes would go to sleep, and we'd pass out, and then we'd never pick it up again. So the gag was that all the adventure was like these 3 encounters, and then it was over, you know? Well, we started this adventure for like the 4th time. And my buddies, Tim and Steve, played characters named Inky and Blackjack. And so Inky was a mutant sorcerer with all these tattoos. So and Blackjack, the dumb barbarian, just kept calling him Inky even though he had a proper name. So I remember that, and I was like, I'm going to take the names and kind of appropriate them and put them here because it's a great frickin' crack kind of duo. And yeah, that's where that came from. But when it comes from the characters, the only one who I could say I actually modeled off of something known is Slurm, because I really kind of made him a cross between Professor Elemental, the steampunk rapper, and Snidely Whiplash. You know, because you gotta have a mustache for it. And actually, the funny part is I actually wrote Slurm when this was still a play. I wrote Slurm for me to play because I love playing big bad guys. Because villains, I think, are the best. Yeah, they get to do all the fun stuff. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Are you afraid of koalas?
Oh, I love koalas. Every time we go to the zoo, I get excited because I want to go see the koalas.
Can I tell you, every time everybody read this show, and we were playing, people come back and goes, "Should we about the koalas? Can I eat the koala one?"
And I'm actually, there's a couple of things that Mike and I are working on right now, because why ruin a good thing when we have such a good, talented parent? He's very mad at me because I'm about 3 years late on finishing the next draft of the next show that we're working on. He's now taking bets on whether it'll ever get done or not. Well, we're writing a snarky adaptation of Jason and the Argonauts that I think will be a really, really fun story for us to do. And I'm hoping that this will be for like middle school age groups that, you know, be right in their wheelhouse. Because I think a lot of important bits of history and myth and folklore are kind of being taken out of curriculums these days. And I think it's important to keep it in there by hook or by crook, you know. So if they can't get it in the classroom, and in most classes they still can, but in some they can't. And hopefully they'll at least get it on the stage, you know. And the other thing I actually want to write is a sequel to Super Sidekick. I do want to continue the story. It'll be a time when Blackjack has gone off and bought the farm, literally bought a farm. Yeah, exactly. So he's bought a farm. Inky is now the hero of the kingdom, and it's time for him to select his own sidekick. And he has to remember the lessons that he's learned. And Slurm and the Ninja Koalas come back, and there will be pirate pandas, and there will be there's going to be all kinds of other exciting anthropomorphisms and other interesting elements. So that's kind of on the chalkboard right now. We're gonna see where that goes. But young artists got to get into this, so we'll see what happens. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, for the nephew. This is the first time you've seen it. You pretty proud of your uncle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet the cast, buddy? Did you guys get to meet the cast? We'll introduce you in a minute. Yeah. Good pictures of everybody.
But don't touch Inky, he's a little sticky. Any other questions, comments, or thoughts? We want to thank you very much for sharing your show with us and being here.
Guys.
Thank you very much. Please, everybody, enjoy the